to produce this live. So if that does happen, we'll try to edit them out of the video to the best of our ability. So let's go over it. So welcome, guys. Now the reason why we're teaching Windows 7 today, today's date, by the way, is June 28th of 2014, is because I personally really cannot endorse Windows 8. I just don't think that it's a very good solution for many people. If you're going to be running Windows, whether it's on a PC or if you want to run Windows on your Mac via software like Parallels, which is how I'm able to do this right now, I tend to recommend Windows 7 just because it's been around longer, it's still supported, and for the most part, it's fairly reliable. So let's go over everything. Okay, starting with this screen you see right here when you first turn on your PC, or in my case, my PC on my Mac, is called the desktop. Okay, it's where all of your little shortcuts are going to live to the programs that you use the most. I'm going to show you later on today how to create some of these shortcuts and how to modify a whole bunch of different things. The first thing I like to do is kind of go over where your stuff is and then talk a little bit about hierarchy, because that seems to make things a little bit clear for some people who are new to this kind of thing. So as I mentioned, this right here is your desktop. But for the most part, the access to all of your stuff is found here in the Start menu. Okay, that there is another place, but I'm going to go over that in just a moment. So here in the Start menu, it looks a little bit different than it has in previous versions, if you compare it to XP especially, but also Vista. So here we have, for example, My Name. Okay, that is your user folder. So if your computer is failing and you want to just rescue data, this should be the first folder that you target, because that's where all of your personal stuff is going to be. So in other words, your photos, your music, your movies, etc. All of the applications, hey, you can always re-download them or reinstall them from a disk. So that is where all of your stuff actually lives. Underneath that, you're going to find a whole bunch of common places people go for their data. Of course, Documents, formerly known as My Documents, now just simply Documents. All of your pictures are stored in the Pictures folder. Music, whether you're going to be using a program like iTunes or Windows Media Player, it's going to store all of your music right there. And then here we have Computer, formerly known as My Computer in past versions. So when we're talking about hierarchy, that is basically the top. So when you go into Computer, this should look very familiar to most of you. We have within the computer the C drive. Okay, and that's where all the actual data is. Underneath the C drive is where you'll find the users folders. So that one that I showed you just a moment ago that had my name on it, that's where it is. And if I go into that, that's where I'll find all of those folders. So for example, the pictures, music, documents, etc. You'll see a few things pop up that will definitely indicate that I am in fact running right now Windows on a Mac. You can just kind of ignore those, but just pay attention to where the stuff is if you're on a PC. So that's a little bit about hierarchy. Let's go also back here. You'll notice that you also have access to the control panel from here. The control panel is where all of the settings are that affect the entire computer. I'm going to give you a few tips, and we're going to focus on that a little bit later today. A shortcut, a very common shortcut places people need to go to often, is devices and printers. So if you need to add a printer to your computer, for example, that is one way to do it. However, you could also get there through the control panel. Okay? The next place I want to show you is right here, where it has all programs here at the bottom left. And when you just kind of hover over it, you'll see a giant list of all the different pieces of software that come installed on your computer. Now, if these you find are out of order, one of the tricks you can do, PC users, you have a left click and a right click. The left click is used most of the time, but the right click usually means that you want access to some extra options or settings. In this case, if these were out of order, if you right click, just a handy little tip, you can organize these. I already have it done, but you can organize these in alphabetical order. Okay? Oops, didn't mean to open that. Close that. Also, you'll see that you have a easy access to search options right here. So if there's a file that you're just trying to locate, can't figure out where it is, you can just type it at any point right here, and the computer will search through the whole computer, try to find it for you. Now you'll also notice that I have some programs here, and I have some other ones down here at the very bottom of my screen. This bottom part of the screen is where I'm going to focus on right now. This is referred to as the taskbar. And so the different programs that you use the most commonly, you can have them, we refer to it as pinning. So you can have it stick right to that bar so you have easy access to it. So you'll notice on mine, for example, I have Google Chrome, Thunderbird. These are all programs that I do recommend to PC users. We'll go over that at the very end. And if you ever have an application, a program that you want to pin to the taskbar, it's as simple as going here into the Start menu, going into All Programs, and let's say I want to pin Google Drive, okay? So if I want to pin Google Drive, I can just put my cursor over it and right-click. When I do that, you'll see here we have two different options. One is pin to taskbar. If I do that right now, you'll see it's now added the little icon right down here at the bottom of my screen. But the other option is to pin it to the Start menu. And that, you'll notice, is up here. So when I pin it to the Start menu, it's just going to stick right there. Below where you see this are just simply the different programs that I've run recently. So if you're going back and forth and the program that you need to access isn't one that you commonly, not one you really commonly need, but you need to go back to it, you will find it listed here. Is anyone else having any audio issues? I see one person reporting that they can't hear. One thing I always do like to make a quick mention of, I should have done this at the beginning, is if you are taking our classes live and you have a DSL connection, it does not tend to work well. In that case, it tends to work better if you watch the videos after the case. It's just the fact that DSL is not fast enough to attend a live class. So I don't see anyone else here. Anyone else having any audio issues? No. Looks like we're okay. If someone could just say, can hear you right now, that would be good. I'm going to go on and continue, though, in the meantime. Okay, so we talked a little bit about hierarchy, a little bit about where your stuff is. Thank you, Anna, who just reported that she can hear me fine. So the person who said they were having issues, you may want to check your internet connection just in case. Another place where it's really handy to know about a right-click option is when you're here on the desktop. Now you'll notice mine, I have this pretty little background. This actually comes with Windows 7. And one of the key settings I want to make sure everyone knows where to go to change it up is if you right-click on the desktop, you get a few different options here. One of which you'll see here at the very bottom is Personalize. And if you go in, that's going to give you some of the different display options. These are not all of the display options, but the ones that most of you are going to probably care about. And Windows 7 comes pre-installed with these 7 themes. So these are different backgrounds that have a common theme to them. For example, this one here is actually my favorite, the one for the United States, just because the main one is if I minimize this, you'll see. Oh, I think I was actually already on that. My bad. So, but if I switch it over here, for example, to nature, you'll see that it changed the background. And it's going to add like a little bit of a slideshow sort of presentation here. So it's going to go from one image to the other slowly. Okay. Also, another thing that you can do is, let's say you have your own photo. You want that to become the desktop background. I can't remember if I actually have any here, but if I go to where I have my pictures, sample pictures, and let's say these are ones that do just in fact come with the computer. Okay, I can, if I remember this correctly, I can right-click on it. Yes, I'm right. And the option right here, the second one from the top, is Set as Desktop Background. So you'll see as soon as I do that, it becomes the photo. So if you have photos of your family or photos you've taken on trips, nature, whatever it is you want, you can do this as well with your own personal photos. Getting back in here, another thing I like to show people, just because I know kind of the average age of our members tends to be 50 plus or so. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people. One of the things I like to do is show you how to increase the size of the font across the board. The easiest way to do this is if you look here on the left-hand side, it says Display. And I have mine currently set to the maximum. It's not going to look huge on your screens only because of how I'm doing this class right now, but this will increase the size of the font across the board. So if you need to make it a little bit easier to read the text that is on your screen, this is where you would go. Okay. Other things that you can do here is you'll notice that there's an option to change up all of the sounds. So if you don't like those generic Windows alert sounds, for example, they have all these different sound schemes. You can change them up, okay, and you can see how they sound. You can play any of the different noises here. I don't think I have my audio hooked up so that all of you can hear it, but anyways, that's how you do it. Okay, let's get out of that. The next thing I want to talk about, let me see here, is if you want to create a folder structure. And actually, even, you know what, even before we go there, I want to show you another key place that just makes it easy for you to find your stuff. Next to where I have my little Windows icon, many of you will see you have also on your screen this little icon down here at the bottom left. It looks like a bunch of little folders. That is referred to as Windows Explorer, and it's just a really easy way to get into these different shortcuts. Now, one of the things I have done for some of my clients in the past who really just want their computer simplified. They don't want to have to look for anything. They want it to be pretty obvious. Another trick I want to show you that I have done for them in the past is the Downloads folder tends to be a place that a lot of people who are new to this kind of thing forget about. So they go on the web, they download something, and they forget where it actually is. When you download something, it goes to the Downloads folder. Pretty self-explanatory. So if you want this shortcut to appear here on your screen, what you can do is you can, in fact, create a shortcut. To do that, you put your cursor over the item. You're going to right-click, and you'll see here that there's an option to send to, and when you put your cursor over that, you get another menu here, and it says desktop. So if you look right here, it's just created a little shortcut. So if you're setting up your own computer or maybe setting up a computer for someone else and you just want to give them really the easiest way to find their stuff, I would recommend doing that for both the Downloads folder and probably also the Documents folder. Send to desktop. So now we have two shortcuts right there. Next, I want to talk about the different screen size options, and there's a few of them here. If you look here at the top right corner of this window, we have three little buttons here. We have an X, a box, and a sort of looks like an underscore. The X is on any window, it will close it. Very simple. Next is the box, which will turn it into full screen mode. So it'll take up the whole screen. And when you're in full screen, you'll notice it has these two boxes instead at the top right corner. And when I click that, it'll restore it to the previous size. Finally, here we have a little minus symbol or an underscore that is minimize. So when I click on that, it's going to kind of genie it down here into this space here. You'll also notice that as I move my cursor and just kind of hover over it, for example, let me do this quickly with Google Chrome. To give you an example here. Okay. If I hover my cursor over Google Chrome, it kind of gives me a little preview here of the window that I was last on. So if I click on this, it'll restore it so it comes back to full screen. Let me change that up. I was last teaching people how to increase the size of the screen, and I apparently forgot to change it back. So let's get out of that. Okay. I was always curious if that's how they got the word Xbox. Xbox. Just curious. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Another thing that you can do, this is something that I am personally not a fan of, but hey, some people do like it, is you can also run the different applications, the different programs or windows in half screen mode. So let's say, for example, I want to have half my screen be my email program and I want half the screen to be the web. The way you could do that is, let me launch once again Google Chrome. Okay. I don't know why the box on that is so small. Shouldn't be doing that. One of the ways that you can snap it so that it takes up half of the screen is to grab the bar that surrounds it. So in this case, it's this blue bar here on the top. And that's also where how you would move any of these windows around. Is you can just click that area and drag and move it. And what you can do is just move it to the very right or left corner. And when you do that, you'll see it snaps into place. And it's now taking up half of the screen. So for example, if I go to Amazon.com, I can have half of my screen be Amazon. And now when I go into my mail program, Come on. For whatever reason, my mail program is, oh, there we go. It's just a little slow. Like I said, we are running Windows on a Mac right now through Parallel, so it's not going to be using all of the different resources. Let's skip out of that. So now I can just take this window here, drag it to the left-hand side, and you'll notice it snaps and takes up half of the screen. Basically, the reason why I'm personally just not a big fan of this is if you look at both of these windows here, not really either of them is very usable right now. It's just the web, your email, it's not designed to run on half a screen. It's designed to run in full screen mode. Plus, at least I have a little bit of trouble reading everything here. Granted, for whatever reason, I don't know why my web browser, in this case, oops, click over here, is so teeny tiny. But I'm not really worried about it right now because we're just demonstrating the stuff anyway. Another thing I want to show you is how to resize. Okay, so let's say right now this, I go back to kind of the normal screen options. I want to just extend this out a little bit more to the right. Another thing, this is universal on every single window, every program for the most part that I'm aware of, is if you put your cursor here at the bottom right corner, you get these two little, waiting for it to adjust so you can all see it. It's interesting. I'm viewing the window where I can see what all of you see, and it does not show up here. Your arrow will turn into what looks to be two arrows, one pointing to the upper left, one pointing to the lower right, and you can click and drag to resize any window. And what's handy about this applies also, by the way, to you Mac users, is when you close and then go back into it, it will be at that same size. Just another good thing to know. Next thing I want to do is teach you how to create something that is referred to as a jump list. A jump list is a little bit like a bookmark, just works in a little bit of a different way. So let's create quickly, I think I still have it here, yes I do. So let's say you want to really keep your desktop clean, okay? And you want to have an easy way to get to your downloads, but you just don't want an icon here. Well, for now, I'm going to actually delete this. And by the way, anytime you see that little arrow, that means it's always just a shortcut. You can delete it no matter what it is. You are not deleting the program, you're just deleting the shortcut to it. But I still want to have an easy way to get into my Downloads folder without necessarily having to go through Windows Explorer, or certainly the Start menu. So one way that you can do that is, check this out. If I right-click on Windows Explorer, okay, it's going to give me the frequent places that I've gone to in Windows Explorer, and one of them, no shocking, is the Downloads folder. You'll also notice that here on the right hand side we have this little pin icon, and if you click that, it will pin it to the top of this list. So no matter if I go to a whole bunch of other different locations on this computer, I can always get back there. So if you really like to have a clean desktop, personally I do, although granted I don't really use Windows, that might be one option you want to do. That applies to pretty much, not every, but a lot of different programs on Windows 7. For example, you can do it here with Google Chrome. You'll see here I have a whole bunch of different websites that I had recently been to, and I have pinned google.com. Maybe I want to Google CNN. I want to not pin, but also in the jump list, I want to pin CNN. I can click on that and it will stick right there. So that even as I go to different websites, I'll still have a quick way to get back to that site. Let's see. Next thing. Oh, let's say you're in a program and you want to, let's not do that. Let's get out of Google Chrome for a moment here. We'll keep using that. I'm going to go into Paint because that's what everyone uses Windows for, right? Is Paint. Hooray. Another trick I would just want to show you if you ever want to quit out of a program is you can always put your cursor here at the top left. If you double click, 1, 2, that is one fast way to quit out of any program. So it's not running in the background, it's completely quit out right now. Let's see. As you start to throw away items and put them into your little recycle bin here, of course you can drag them and drop them. However, I always like to give you all little shortcut ways to do it. Now, on the Mac, I've taught many of my clients this. If you have a file and you want to send something to the trash, it's Command Delete. On a PC, if you have a file that you want to send straight to the recycle bin, the trick to do it, let's see here, I've got to remind myself, I have it right here. Here we go. You know what, let me go over that. Is it Shift Delete? I got to remind myself now. How's that? No. Sorry, I went a little bit out of order on this. You know what? Let's. I'm sorry. I was very close. Not really. If you have a file, let's say I want to delete this little shortcut here to Dropbox, and I'm just too lazy to drag it here to the recycle bin, what you can do is you can hold the Control key and tap the letter D as in David, and you'll see here it says, are you sure you want to move this to the recycle bin? Yes. Sorry about that, folks. Took me a minute to remember that one here. When you have to go back between Windows and Mac as much as I do, sometimes you get a little mixed up. Okay. Other thing I want to show you here also does involve right-clicking, is when you go into that Start menu, you have a little button down here at the bottom right. And I have to be very careful when I do this because if I misclick, I accidentally end the class. So here is where you can go to Switch Users, Log Off, Lock the Screen, Restart, Hibernate, or Shut Down. Now, the way that this comes by default is this button that you see here that on mine says Sleep actually says Shut Down. So if you more commonly sleep as opposed to shut down, let me show you how to alter which is the standout button right here. You're going to right-click on that button, and you'll see that you get a little pop-up button that says Properties, which you can now left-click on. And here's where it says Power Button Action, and you can tell it any of those options. So if I change it, for example, to Restart and hit Apply, you'll now see that it says Restart instead of Sleep. Another handy trick, if you need to empty the recycle bin, you can right-click on it. Again, extra options here. Second one down is Empty Recycle Bin. One of the common questions a lot of Windows users have is when you first buy a PC, it does come pre-installed with a lot of extra software that you did not pay for. Believe it or not, this is not a joke. The actual term for that software is referred to as crapware. There's also another term, but crapware seems to be the one that's sticking right now. And what I want to do is just give you a few little tips for a way to clear it out. It just kind of helps your computer boot faster. One of the things a lot of PC users will find, not entirely related to that, but as you own a PC longer and longer, it tends to take a lot longer for the computer to start up. That's not really abnormal. It's just kind of part of how Windows works. It's a combination of extra programs running in the background that are all starting up when you start your computer. Also other pieces that you don't want called malware and worms. So if you ever want to uninstall software, you cannot just simply drag it to the trash. What you saw me do earlier with Dropbox, I was just deleting a shortcut. It was just a reference file. I'm not actually deleting the program itself. If you ever want to do that, though, here's how you do it. You're going to go into where it says Control Panel. And very handy, down here at the bottom left, it says Uninstall a Program. Click on it. Now, if you're unsure whether or not you should be deleting something, for example, let's say, of course I don't see any, Microsoft.NET Framework 4, okay? If you're not sure of whatever it is, probably don't delete it. Just let it sit there. But if it's something that you used and just no longer have a need for, or if it's demo software, let's see if I can find anything here. I can do this. This is the software for my aerial drone that I fly. I now use the software with a Mac, so I don't really need this anymore. You could just simply click on it so that it's highlighted, and you'll notice up here it says Uninstall. Click on that. I'll say, are you sure? And it just kind of follows you through a few different prompts here as it uninstalls the software. The reason why you can't just simply drag it into the recycle bin is just because there are other files other than the program that you see that are hidden, and it needs to clear all of those out. Let's close out of that. Another thing, let's say you're on your PC, you have a bunch of stuff that's open, okay? So let's just open everything. Let's open Google Drive, Dropbox. I saw someone was asking what is Google Drive and Dropbox. I'll go over that in a little bit. We actually have classes on all of them. We'll just do this so I can just kind of start it up. So you're starting to get a little bit of a cluttered desktop here. Okay, more and more things running at the same time. And then you realize you just really need access to something that's on your desktop. This might be a little bit tough for some of you to be able to read, so you may have to just kind of listen to where I'm going. But if you notice at the very bottom right corner of your screen, there's this little thin bar. and that is the Show Desktop button. So if I click that, it hides everything. So if I have a file on here that I just need to open, I can just double click on it and get quick access to it. Okay. Another handy feature, I'm going to go back here into Windows Explorer. Oops, let's get out of that. Okay. I'm just going to quit out of these things from running. Or just close them rather. Let's go into Documents here for a moment. As you start to acquire more and more documents on your computer, you may eventually want to create a folder structure. So for example, within my Documents folder, I might have a folder for taxes of 2014, a folder for taxes of 2013, a folder for recipes, a folder for this and that. Anytime you want to create a folder, all you have to do is right-click, and you'll see here down at the bottom it says New, and not just folder, but we have a few other options you'll see here, like a rich text document. Depending on what software you have running on your computer, you may see a few additional options. But in my case, I'll just do folder. And now I can type in and call it whatever I want. And that's it. Let's see here. Control panel. A couple other things I want to go over with the control panel, just to kind of show you not really critical things. Let's go back. Control panel. Okay, so I want you to notice here we have also the settings for your network. Okay, if you have a laptop, for example, that has access to wireless, you would see an icon down here at the bottom right-hand corner, which you could click on and would show you the various wireless networks that are available. One tip I want to actually throw out there, it doesn't sound related to any of this, but I think it's important that everyone should know this, especially this day and age, is you may notice where you live, and I'm going to speak from my own location right now. Here the big internet provider is Comcast, and they almost have a monopoly on the area. And Comcast is rebranding some of their services called Xfinity. And as you walk through town where I am here, you'll see this network that pops up all over it called Xfinity Wireless. Okay, and it appears to be free Wi-Fi. I very strongly recommend to everyone, not just PC users, but also Mac users, if you're on an iPhone or even an Android phone, don't join those networks. Here's the reason why. Your computer remembers what wireless networks you go into. So for example, if you have a home network, you notice if you take your laptop, you go elsewhere, and then you come back, you don't need to rejoin it. It does it automatically. The reason why it's risky to ever join those public networks is if someone creates what appears to be an open network called Xfinity Wireless, and your computer has previously joined a network with the same name, they can now get into some of your stuff, certainly. So it's not a good idea to ever join those networks. I just like to try to inform our users as best as possible, even if it goes just a little bit off topic, so please excuse that extra little tip. Also here you'll see this is where we can go to add devices like printers, for example, or scanners. An important tip about adding a printer, there's no universal real way to do it. Because the way a printer works is it uses something called a driver. And just think of the driver as the mailman between your computer and the device, the printer in this case. So the safest thing that I usually tell my customers to do is, let's say you go out and you buy one of the printers that we recommend on PCClassesOnline.com. Well, that printer is going to come with a disk in the case of PCs. Mac users, you almost never need it because of how the Mac works, but for PCs you do. And most of the time, not always. What I usually recommend doing is go to that printer's manufacturer's website and download the driver directly from them, because if you do it from a disk, you never really know when that disk was made, so it might be an old version. By going directly to the website, you know you're getting the latest updated version. It's just more likely to be reliable. So this is where you would go, you'd plug it in or attach it to your wireless network, however you decide to do it, and that's where you would go for that. If you have multiple users on your computer, if you want to add users, that's what you'll find up here at the top right. Okay. Parents, this is also where you can go to add parental controls, although granted they don't really work perfectly. There are other ways that you can really kind of tie down the computer if you have young children, don't want them exposed to things on the internet. But also this is where you can go to add additional accounts. You can see in my case it's right here. add or remove user accounts. You can click right down here to create a new account. You can choose to make it either a standard user or an administrator. Okay, let's close out of that. Volume settings, you'll see down here at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Okay, so if you ever need to increase the volume, there's usually two different places that you can find volume. For example, if you're, let's say you're watching a video on YouTube, there's an audio control in YouTube, but there's also one for your computer. So make sure that your computer one is at 100, and then you can manually adjust the YouTube one to your liking. You'll also see here on the right-hand side, I have these little gadgets here, and that's actually what they're called, gadgets. Now, funny story about these. When Windows 7 first came out, there were a whole ton of these different gadgets that you could add, like a clock, weather, but there were a lot of other ones too. However, there was a major security flaw in their design. So instead of fixing it, Microsoft basically just decided to lock it out. So unfortunately, the only gadgets that you have access to now are the ones that do come with Windows 7. If you want to add them, all you have to do is right-click on your desktop, and you'll see it right here. It's the second to the last option. And if you want to add any of these, let's say I want to add a CPU meter, see how the computer's running. I can just double-click on that, and it will add it over here. I can drag it and drop it wherever I want. Excuse me. Okay, I'm kind of going through some of the different questions that we have here coming in. What's the difference between saving the app to the start menu and pinning? Technically, both are considered pinning. It's just where do you want it to stick? If it's I personally tend to recommend people more that they use the taskbar here, just because it kind of gets it off your desktop. But also the start menu can be a little bit, this can fill up and take up your whole screen, so I prefer to keep it clean, but you can, of course, do this however you want. Next, what I would like to do is I want to start to get into some of the different hotkeys that Windows users should be aware of. These are key combinations that you're going to press on your keyboard, and when you do them at the same time, it's going to cause a different action to take place. Now, there's a whole ton of them that are out there. I really just like to focus on the ones that most people need access to. There's only about a dozen or so here. Actually, I think less than a dozen. So let's start with, I'm actually going to go here. Let's go into Documents. Let's say you need to select everything, okay? I need to do something to everything, whether it's emails or everything that's within a folder. The universal command for select all is Control and the letter A. Pretty much all of these hotkeys are going to involve the Control key unless I say otherwise. So A is select all. B would pop up, let's say you're in a document and you want to make the text bold. You would just click and drag over it. Let's see if I can do that real quickly here. Okay, excuse me, my voice is gone. So I could click and highlight that text. Control and the letter B will make it bold. Other commands that are, other hotkeys that are important are copy and paste. Copy and paste are two letters that are next to each other. If I want to copy this, I would highlight it and hit Control C. Paste is not P. Paste is actually the letter V. There you go. D, I already mentioned, that is to send something directly to the trash. Let's say you're on a website and it's updating in real time and you need to refresh it, or sorry, if you need to refresh it so that it hits real time, Control R is the universal command for refresh. Probably the most important one that you should know is, let's say, pretend this is actually a giant document, it's 1,000,000 pages long, and oops, I deleted everything. The universal command for undo, so to go back a step in time, is Control and the letter Z as in zebra. Likewise, if you need to go back multiple steps, if you keep hitting it, you'll keep going back in time. If you go back too far and you need to go forward, redo is Control Y. Okay? P is print. If you are clicked on a file and need to open it, O is open. If you're on a website, for example, and you need to make it bigger, let's see if I can pull this up quickly. Okay, so let's say it's really teeny tiny and I need to make it larger. Control and the plus key will make it larger. Control and the minus key will make it smaller. Another big one that a lot of PC users do know is they're aware of Control Alt Delete. Control Alt Delete is a way something to do if the computer is crashing. However, there's a better one to use a lot of times that a lot of people don't know about, which is Control, Shift, and Escape. So those are all going to be on the left-hand side of your keyboard. So if you hit Escape, Shift, and Control at the same time, that will bring you to what is referred to as the Task Manager. So if you have applications rather, that are not responding correctly, you'll be able to click on them here and hit End Task to attempt to quit out of them. I have not always had the best success with that. A lot of times, I'm sure a lot of PC users here will agree, if you do that, many times you end up having to restart the computer, but sometimes it does work. Next thing, very, very important to go over, is I need to go over the different ways that you can select multiple items. And actually, I think to go over this, I'm going to go over this in email. Just please understand that when you're selecting multiple items, this applies to the entire computer. This is not by any means just email. This is everything. Okay, so by the way, please ignore the email address you see on your screen right now. This is one I only use for teaching purposes. And if you don't get the reference, I was on Shark Tank, and that's what this all refers to. So, if you need to select random items here, let's say I'm going through my email and I just need to delete a whole bunch of different emails, but they're not in any particular order. One way you can do that is to hold the Control key and you can click on multiple items. And you'll notice that as I do this, it selects all of those different emails. For example, if I were to hit the delete key right now, it would send all of those into the trash. The next way to select multiple items is when you want to select a list. So pretend I want to select every email from here through here. The way you would do it is you would click on the first item, but this time you're going to hold the Shift key and click on the last one. When you do that, it will highlight everything in between, and if I were to hit, again, the delete key, it would send all of those to the trash. And then the other one, of course, which we already mentioned, is Select All. Control A will highlight everything. If you have everything here, or maybe a list of items selected, and now you need to deselect one item. Let's say, oops, I didn't mean to select this one here. If something is already highlighted and you hold the Control key and click on it, that is also the way to individually deselect any item. Another handy one to know. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over all those little extra tricks I like to give access to our users. I'm going to go over the different pieces of software that I tend to recommend to many of my clients if they're going to be using a PC that they install. Before this class started, I did ask everyone here live just kind of an idea of how many people are actually attending this class because they want to run Windows on their Mac. And it was a very large number of them. You guys especially pay attention to the end because there's a very important thing that Mac users should be aware of if they're going to run Windows on their Mac. So, if you want to install software on your computer, basically all of these you're going to gain access to through the web. So, the Windows machine comes pre-installed with Internet Explorer. Recently, the government actually came out with an official warning telling people, advising people not to use Internet Explorer because it is so unstable and insecure. I agree, would never recommend it. Instead, for a web browser, I absolutely recommend Google Chrome. It is the best. Just one example of a reason why is, let's say you use multiple computers. Google Chrome will sync so that if you bookmark something on one computer, you'll automatically bookmark it on your other computer, provided that you are signed in on both. Also, if you've ever been on a video, for example, and it won't load and it says your Flash player needs to update, it's a non-issue in Google Chrome because Flash is built into the guts of Google Chrome, at least on the computer. Not on iOS devices, for example, but on the computer it is. Another piece of software, you've seen me reference it many times, is Mozilla Thunderbird. Now, Windows, depending on what version you have, usually either comes with Outlook or Windows Mail. Mozilla Thunderbird I have found to be incredibly reliable. It works with every email service out there, so whether you use Gmail or Yahoo or, God forbid, AOL, you can plug that information into Mozilla Thunderbird and it will fetch all of your email for you. Another one, Google Drive, which you saw me reference earlier. Down here you can see I have it. If you are a Gmail account user, you actually already have access to it. You just might not have installed it into your computer. Google Drive and Dropbox, and there's a few other services out there, they're all very similar. It's cloud storage. It's also a great trick for if you want to have access to files in multiple places. So one tip I want to give you right now is, let's say you have important documents that you need access to. Instead of saving those documents to, let's say, your Documents folder, you can instead save them into Google Drive. And what that will do is it will just, when you put the document in there, it's going to send a copy of it to the cloud. So if you need to get access to that same document, you can go to any computer, you can go to google.com, sign in under your account, and you'll have access to your Google Drive files and folders anywhere on any computer, any device. And it's free, by the way. With Google Drive, big reason why I recommend Google Drive these days over Dropbox is amount of storage. Google Drive gives you, I believe, 15 gigabytes. It's either 15 or 16, I forget which. Dropbox these days gives you 2. Next is Malwarebytes. Critical. And I always try to be very open with people whether I recommend the free version of something or the paid version. With Malwarebytes, I absolutely recommend the paid version. Here's the big reason. There's a particularly bad virus going around right now. Please understand, if you're watching this video on the web after we've recorded it live, these videos are of course a snapshot in time. This may not be the case in the future, but right now there is a horrible virus going around called CryptoLocker. It's one of these viruses where once you realize you have it, it's already too late. And what it does is it encrypts all of your data so that you can't open your own files. Even if you remove the virus, you still can't get into your stuff. To my knowledge, the only software that will prevent you from ever getting it is the paid version of Malwarebytes. If you want to buy a copy of it, you can get a very inexpensive license, a lifetime license, through our website. If you go to pcclassesonline.com/store, you'll notice in our store on the left-hand side there's a category for PC software. You'll find a link there. And the nice thing, obviously, with a lifetime license is as they come out with new versions, you'll get all of those for free. Next one is if you want to, let's say a lot of people out there want to watch Netflix on their computer. Important note, as of today's date and time, you cannot run Netflix on Google Chrome. So it's always a good idea to have a backup web browser. I tend to recommend Safari, but there are others out there like Firefox, and if anyone actually uses Opera, but I tend to recommend Safari. If you want to play Netflix on your computer, there's a piece of software you do need on your computer, which is referred to as Silverlight. So just go to google.com, search for Silverlight, and install it. It's a very small file. Let's see if I can just pull it up real quick. Sorry, I forgot that I left it really small, and you'll see it right here. So you'll just have to go and install that software. Okay? Next one is Flash. That's more if you're using, again, a different web browser. Just Google the word Flash. It's made by Adobe. It's a technology that has to deal with videos, but again, if you're using Google Chrome, you do not actually need that. Next one is a universal video player, because not everything out there plays everything. There's a great little piece of software called VLC. You can download that one. Just Google it. As far as word processing software, there's 2 different options out there, one of which I actually really have started pretty heavily using lately, which is referred to as Evernote. We have a whole class on Evernote. It's great software because if you use a laptop and another device and an iPhone or any other smartphone, it syncs automatically. It's very, very basic, but for people who don't have really strict needs, if they're not doing big presentations and resumes, Evernote is free and it's pretty handy. However, the other alternative is, of course, Microsoft Office. Office has right now a few different options. You can go with the current version, which is referred to as Office 365. And what's different about Office 365 compared to older versions is that it's a subscription. So you're paying a yearly fee to have access to the latest version of whatever. Personally, I don't recommend Office 365 only because they come out with a new version of Office every 3 years. So what's the point? So I would always recommend going with a older version, not too old, but you can find the versions that we recommend, of course, in our store. Again, pcclassesonline.com/store. And for antivirus software, in addition to Malwarebytes, there's usually one or two I tend to recommend. Either Avast, A-V-A-S-T, which is pretty decent and also free, and AVG. AVG has a paid version and a free version. I'd go with the free version. I do not recommend personally, and this is my own opinion, I do not recommend Norton Antivirus or McAfee. Both I have found in my own experience cause more problems than they actually fix. And finally, if you have an Apple device, whether it's an iPhone or an iPad, make sure you Google the term iCloud Control Panel. That is the way to get your iPad or iPhone to play very nicely with your PC. And oh, by the way, iTunes. How could I forget that? iTunes just really the easiest way to organize your music and send it to different devices. Some people like other programs like Spotify, and there's a couple others out there that are a little bit smaller, but personally, I always recommend iTunes. So what I would like to do now is go over one last final tip, because I know that this video is appealing also to people who want to run Windows on their Mac. There's a quick tip I want to go over. It's very important that all of you note this. So I mentioned that little virus, CryptoLocker. Those of you who've gotten to know me through these classes know that in addition to PC Classes Online, I have a small business also, referred to as the Mac Guru. And I work a lot one-on-one with businesses, individuals. Occasionally I travel and work with, larger businesses and a small handful of celebrities. But I've only in my entire career encountered 4 viruses ever on a Mac. 3 of them I fixed by simply going to the Apple icon and hitting software update. Very, very simple, and that goes back several years. The one other virus that I did encounter, and this was a bad one, was CryptoLocker. And it was a client of mine who was doing pretty much exactly what you see here. She was running QuickBooks via Parallels, so she could have access to both the PC version of that software, and without going to any risky websites, at least not to my knowledge, or checking email, or really anything, she got this virus, and it encrypted all of her data, but it also encrypted all of her Mac data. So what I want to show all of you is if you are running Parallels to access Windows on your Mac, make sure you go into Parallels Configure Options and watch out for this one here. I want you to go to where it says Options right here, the second tab in, Sharing, and where it says Share Folders, I strongly recommend None. Or you can create one folder that does have access so that you can share files back and forth between the Mac and the PC. The reason why, she had it on this. She had it on the home folder. And so what happened, I'm not going to actually do it, is the PC side had access to the Mac files, and so it encrypted those as well, so she really lost everything. So big tip if you are in fact doing this on a Mac. What I'm going to do now is, for the people who are here live, I want to take some time and answer all of their questions. For those of you who have been tuning in through our website, a couple quick things, or YouTube rather. If you're watching us on YouTube, we of course really do appreciate it if you click that little like button beneath the video, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you can be notified the second that we come out with new videos, and make sure you sign up on our website. PC Classes Online is a completely free organization. We do not charge anything for our services. We do have different ways that people can donate if they like, but there's no pressure to do so. And thank you for tuning in. That's all, everyone. For those of you who are live, stand by. We'll get to your questions.